to Life with David. I'm David, and today I'm starting the repair of my 1968 Volkswagen Karmann Ghia engine. As I discussed in my previous video, this is the first of several videos that document my year-long journey to resolve valve and overheating issues. I made several missteps during my efforts. I'll point them out as I go so others can learn from my failures. So why don't you join me as we pull the engine out of the car and determine why the valves are going out of adjustment so quickly. I'd like to spend a moment on safety. There's nothing more important than keeping you and your loved ones safe. Be sure to read, understand, and follow the safety rules for your tools. Using your tools properly will greatly reduce the risk of personal injury. And always use the appropriate eye, hearing, and respiratory personal protective equipment. In this video, we're working with all kinds of things that can hurt you, from gasoline and other solvents to pinching and crushing effects of a vehicle on jacks. Keep your head in the game. If you're following along, you're doing so at your own risk. Make sure you have a good Volkswagen manual like John Muir's How to Keep Your VW Alive or a Bentley or Hayes guide. And if you don't feel comfortable doing any of these activities, then don't. Now let's get started. The first step is to remove the engine bonnet. Immediate fail number 1. I didn't disconnect the license plate light first, so I had to wrestle with the engine bonnet while I tried to disconnect the wires with one hand. Save yourself the trouble and disconnect the light first. Next, I removed the connection between the car and the engine. This included the snorkel between the air cleaner and the carburetor, the engine preheat board and tube, and the engine and wiring, including the generator, ignition, oil pressure switch, and backup light. I also disconnected the throttle cable from the carburetor. Make sure to save the carburetor cable connection fitting, as well as stuff rags in all the open holes, and label all wires. Several of the engine cooling tins have to be removed before the engine can come out. I removed the rear pulley tin, the fresh air heater hoses, the intake manifold tins, and the rear engine tin. The rear engine tin took a little persuasion to get out of the way. Now it's time to get under the car. Block the front wheels and jack up the rear. I've used 2 different jacking points in the past. The preferred one is the support that's located between the engine and the transaxle. I've also used the split horn that's in front of the transaxle in conjunction with heavy wooden blocking to spread out the forces. After the car is jacked up enough to get under it, put good jack stands under the outboard ends of each rear torsion tube and gently lower the car down. Make sure it is well supported before you get underneath. Getting crushed is probably the most dangerous part of this job. Take the proper precaution to protect yourself. Once the car is safely supported, I remove the heater control cables. There are 2, one on the front of each of the heater boxes. I also loosen the heater hoses between the heater boxes and the car. Fail number 2. I loosen both the front and rear hose clamps. You really only need to remove the rear hose clamps that connect the hoses to the heater boxes. I also disconnected the gas hose from the hard line and jammed a golf tee in it to keep it from leaking. Then I disconnected the lower engine mounting nuts. For me, they were easy to find since I kept my car clean, but you might have to clean out some gunk to get at them in your case. As long as the upper bolts are installed, you don't have to worry about the engine falling. Next, I moved the jack under the engine. Use a piece of wood between the jack and the bottom of the engine. I find it works best to put the jack directly under the oil strainer. Then lift the engine a little bit, just enough to support its weight. Next, I disconnected the upper engine mounting nuts. Unlike the bottom engine studs, these are bolts and you might have to put a little tension on them to keep them from turning. fail number 3, I decided to remove the firewall tar board. I didn't have to do that, and it made my life miserable with gashed arms because the sharp points that hold the tar board on desperately want to contact bare skin. Okay, this is where you have to get a little aggressive, but with some finesse. Grab the engine by the muffler tips and the fan shroud while wiggling and cussing, and pull the engine to the rear. Make sure the accelerator cable is free as you pull the engine back. Otherwise, it could be broken. Once it's all the way back, slowly lower the engine with the jack. You might have to tip the engine backward to allow the generator pulley to clear the back of the engine opening. Grunting often helps. As long as there is pressure on the jack, you can stop at any time and examine where the engine is hanging up. Once the engine is down, get it off the jack. I used some wood blocks and pry bars to lower it onto the garage floor. Then I jacked the car up high enough so that the bottom of the engine compartment will clear the top of the fan shroud. It's pretty high up in the air, so be careful not to get under the car. Drag the engine out, remove the jack stands, and then lower the car safely onto its wheels. Then have a beer. Now we have to partially disassemble the engine to get to the heads and cylinders. First, I remove the thermostat that's below the numbers 1 and 2 cylinders. Part of the engine tin has to be removed to get at it. Next, I loosen the generator pulley and remove the belt. Then I remove the generator strap. Fail number 4. I don't actually have to remove the strap. I could have just slid it forward and it would have cleared the generator pedestal. I removed all the nuts on the intake manifold to allow it to move during the removal of the fan shroud. I could use the socket for some of the nuts, but I had to use a box end wrench for the others. Then I removed the fuel line and filter, the vacuum line, and the coil wires. After removing screws at both sides of the fan shroud, I was able to lift the shroud and generator straight up. Do not tip it until it clears the oil cooler, otherwise you could damage the cooler. Next, I remove the intake manifold. Then I remove the cylinder head tins and spark plugs. I checked the condition of the plugs for clues as to why the valves were going out of adjustment so quickly. Next, it was time to remove the exhaust system. First, I disconnected the muffler clamps, the nuts that held the muffler onto the heads, and the clamp between the front and rear heater boxes. Then I slid the muffler off. Next, I removed the front heater boxes. Make sure you have disconnected the lower engine cooling tins first. Now that everything has been disconnected from the heads, remove the first valve cover and the rocker arm assembly. Remove and drain the push rods, and then remove the head nuts. After the nuts have been removed, pull the heads off. Catch the pushrod tubes as you remove the head. Then gently remove the cylinders. Depending on how the engine was put together, there may be some sealant between the bottoms of the cylinders and the crankcase. You might need a little persuasion. Just be careful of the cooling fins because they're delicate. Guess what? It's time for another beer. Okay, why are the valves sinking into the head? I'd suspected some cracking around the valve seats, so I'd already purchased new single-port heads. However, I didn't see any cracking. What was wrong? So I removed the number 1 and 2 exhaust valves. Look at that thing wiggle. The valve guide was shot. The idea of the valve guide was 0.3435 inches compared to the spec of 0.314, almost 30 thousandths oversized. I could have just replaced the valve guides in the seats and reused the heads. Fail number 5. Unless time is a major issue, don't pre-buy parts. Thanks for joining me today. We removed the engine from my 1968 Karmann Ghia, disassembled it, and determined the problem with the valves. At this point, I reassembled the engine with new cylinders and heads and then reinstalled it. But then I had some overheating problems. I tried to resolve the overheating issues while the engine was still in the car, but I wasn't entirely successful. Eventually, I had to remove the engine again, where I discovered some problems with the new heads. Next time, I will go over the in-car efforts that I took to reduce the overheating issues. Then, in future videos, I'll show the reassembly process while pointing out the problems. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. If not, give it a thumbs down. And leave a comment or suggestion for things to do. I hope to do more of these videos, so please subscribe and click on the bell for notifications of new videos. Let's get together next time for another day in Life with David. See you soon.